Many of the best-known alleged infectious diseases, such as measles, chickenpox, and hepatitis, are said to be caused by viruses. We have produced specific presentations on not only these conditions, but many more, to expose the fact that the claimed viruses cannot even be shown to exist. But then we have a disease such as whooping cough, also known as pertussis, that is supposedly caused by a contagious bacterium. In this video, we'll go back to the early 1900s literature to examine the pivotal study from which this belief derived, as well as the modern era animal studies that have apparently fooled the medical establishment and sustained the idea. When it comes to the historical data and the whooping cough vaccine programs, the whole business looks even worse. Somebody has got blood on their hands and has been selling another lemon to the public. Few indeed of the childish ailments and illnesses are unavoidable. They are mostly the direct consequence of wrong thinking, wrong feeding, and mistakes in general supervision, and are therefore a reflection upon the mother's methods. Chickenpox, measles, whooping cough, diphtheria are not diseases of childhood. They are disorders of ignorance and mismanagement. They are not diseases at all. They are acute illnesses and therefore reactions, curative in intent against existing disease. If children were brought up sensibly, they would never occur. Dr. Ulrich Williams, Terrain Therapy.
We've seen an increase in the whooping cough.
The second way to prevent whooping cough is to know that the germs only travel a few feet in the air after a cough or sneeze.
Illnesses, things like measles, things like whooping cough, we tend to take for granted that those aren't problems anymore.
We are supposed to believe that we are at war with microbes, and one of these enemies is Bordetella pertussis, the alleged cause of pertussis or whooping cough. In June 2024, Newsweek reported that cases of whooping cough were surging in the United States, although notably, no mention was made of any deaths. However, the article stated that, quote, "The FDA is concerned because the illness is a highly contagious respiratory infection caused by the bacterium Bordetella pertussis. The rise in cases this year can be put down to several factors. Decreased vaccination rates, partially due to vaccine hesitancy, have played a significant role. Following this worrying rise in cases, public health officials are urging everyone to ensure their vaccinations are up to date." You would have thought the story is wearing a bit thin, even for those not following things so closely over the past 5 years. But then again, some people seem to have a hard time breaking this habit.
Oh yeah, people really seem to be enjoying themselves. You know, they come in once. It's like they're addicted.
When you want a summary of the establishment position for a particular disease, then the United States Centre for Disease Control and Prevention is a great place to start. Those of you that are aware of the true nature of this beast will know that the name is a complete misnomer. They don't control or prevent any diseases because they actually help invent and promote imaginary diseases. All in all, the CDC is a key captured global institution involved in supporting markets for the medico-pharmaceutical industry. The CDC's information on whooping cough can be found in Chapter 16 of the Epidemiology and Prevention of Vaccine-Preventable Diseases 14th edition, also known as the Pink Book. As I've just mentioned, there is quite a spoiler alert in the title with regard to where they want this marketing funnel to lead. In the book's overview, it states that, according to CDC, vaccinations will prevent more than 21 million hospitalizations and 730,000 deaths of children born over the last 2 decades. Routine vaccines also protect adolescents and adults from diseases such as meningitis, influenza, pneumonia, and shingles.
Frankly, it sounds made up.
As expected, there is no evidence provided for this fantastic claim. You can watch some of my other videos, including A for Anti-Vaxxer, where I explain how they often trick the public with such claims about vaccines. The good news is that there is a widespread awakening going on, and more people than ever before are questioning, if not rejecting, vaccines. This is evident in the next sentence of the Pink Book's overview, which states, With vaccine hesitancy on the rise and disruption to the immunisation delivery system caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, it is more important than ever that providers have current and trusted information to protect the community against vaccine-preventable diseases. Before we dissect the underlying science, we'll go to the section Clinical Features, where it states that pertussis is defined by an initial 1 to 2 week period characterised by runny nose, sneezing and a low-grade fever. In essence, it is basically like a common cold. The diagnosis of pertussis is made when a persistent cough then develops, which can last up to 10 weeks. In other words, the whole entity can be summarised as a cold followed by a persistent cough. This is not to downplay the potential severity of the condition. During coughing attacks, the patient may turn blue due to reduced oxygen levels or end up vomiting. The name whooping cough is due to a high-pitched inspiratory whoop that may occur at the end of a bout of coughing. To be clear, for the purposes of this discussion, we are taking the condition to be a specific entity based on the clinical presentation. We then get to the CDC's outline concerning the history of the condition. It states, in the 20th century, pertussis was one of the most common childhood diseases and a major cause of childhood mortality in the United States. Before the availability of pertussis vaccine in the 1940s, more than 200,000 cases of pertussis were reported annually. Since widespread use of the vaccine began, incidence has decreased more than 75% compared with the pre-vaccine era. If you were paying attention to that, you would have noted that they started with mortality of the disease in the first sentence, then introduced the word vaccine and made the switch to incidence of the disease. If you are interested to learn more about all the kinds of deceptive games and linguistic tricks that are used to maintain vaccine mythology, then I highly recommend Jordan Henderson's series, Vaccine Evangelists, Apostates and Apologists. Parents are being deceived into thinking that childhood vaccinations are saving lives and preventing serious illnesses, when the establishment's own data show nothing of the sort. Jordan has put together some great charts in this regard. For example, if we look at the New Zealand whooping cough story, we can see that the mortality attributed to the disease had fallen by 98.7% prior to the introduction of the vaccine into the regular schedule in 1958. There was a similar experience in New York City, where the mortality of the disease had fallen into insignificance when the vaccines were introduced in the 1940s. And the experience in Ireland was particularly interesting. The mortality had fallen by a massive 90% by the time a vaccine was introduced in 1953. In 1973, there was negative publicity about the vaccine, so that by 1976, the uptake in the population was only 30%. In the 10 years before 1973, there were a total of 31 pertussis deaths, whereas in the 10 years after 1973, when the vaccination rates plummeted, there was only a total of 12 pertussis deaths. While this would not surprise those of you that already appreciate the fallacies of germ theory, the charts are an ideal introduction to send to people that are newer to this discussion. As well as Jordan's extensive gallery of graphs, there are also the excellent dissolving illusions charts produced by Roman Bystrianyk, and Greg Beatty has documented many of the Australian statistics on his website, Vaccination Dilemma. We have found that while people may not always be ready to hear about the lack of evidence for pathogenic microbes, the charts are a great first step for those in the earlier stages of their investigations into vaccines. So how did the situation come about in which a bacterium was said to be the cause of whooping cough? The CDC Pink Book states that pertussis, or whooping cough, is an acute infectious disease caused by the bacterium Bordetella pertussis. Outbreaks of pertussis were first described in the 16th century by Guillaume de Bayeux. The organism was first isolated by Jules Bordet and Octave Guéngaud in 1906. Once again, this paragraph has been deceptively written. If we take the last sentence, it says, the organism was first isolated by Jules Bordet and Octave Guéngaud in 1906. Here they refer to Bordetella pertussis, which is okay, but the isolation of a bacterial species does not mean that it is pathogenic or disease-causing. The middle sentence, outbreaks of pertussis were first described in the 16th century by Guillaume de Bailleul, has nothing to do with proving the cause of illness. And back to the first sentence, pertussis or whooping cough is an acute infectious disease caused by the bacterium Bordetella pertussis. This is where the whole charade falls apart, because there is no evidence provided to support the claim. In our latest book, The Final Pandemic, we outline the history that led to the unfounded declaration of a bacterial pathogen being identified. In the early 1900s, when germ theory was being embraced by many in the field of medical science, the debates were often centered around not what caused a particular disease, but rather which specific microbe caused the disease. As we wrote in The Final Pandemic, Belgian microbiologists Jules Bordet and Octave Guinguet took up the challenge to confirm the alleged offending microorganism, and in 1906 it was declared that they had found it, as described in this 2010 account by Patrick Guilfoyle. Bordet and Guinguet initially took respiratory secretions from a 5-month-old infant who had whooping cough and placed the material on their growth medium. Many small bacteria, now identified as Bordetella pertussis, grew on the plate. Subsequently, they placed plates containing this medium under the mouths of children who had whooping cough during a coughing spell and isolated the same pathogen from these other patients. Hence, from 1906 onwards, Bordetella pertussis has generally been considered the causal agent of the clinical condition known as whooping cough. However, what was described by Bordet and Guinguet did not establish that this bacterium was inhaled by people to cause illness. Instead, they simply found it in the respiratory secretions of some individuals who had a persistent cough. The relentless coughing is merely an indication that an abnormal state exists in the respiratory tract. Their only significant finding was an association with the presence of, or at least increased amounts of Bordetella pertussis. What we are pointing out is the kind of illogical pseudoscience that is found throughout the archives of germ theory, and it would be like saying that firefighters are the cause of fires. To state the obvious, when we find proliferating bacteria on a rotting piece of steak, we do not declare that the bacteria are pathogens that have attacked a cow. Bacteria respond to the underlying terrain, and when tissue is devitalized or dying, they kick into action to help the breakdown process. If this happens to be inside the body, such as in the lungs, then the same process will take place. In The Final Pandemic, we also outline the ridiculous attempts to demonstrate, quote, infection of rhesus macaques by pouring large amounts of bacterial cultures directly into their lungs via tubes. Their supposed evidence for infection was that the Bordetella bacteria that had been poured into the macaques could then be found in their upper airways for the next 2 weeks. But hang on, isn't that
right where you left it? Yeah, right where you left it.
Indeed, they were simply finding the bacteria being progressively cleared out of the respiratory tract following the initial insult. Interestingly, only 1 out of the 4 monkeys developed any cough at all, and it was described as mild. So they couldn't even replicate the hallmark feature of pertussis, which is supposed to be a severe persistent cough. In any case, the whole experiment can be completely discarded as unscientific because there was no control group. That is, macaques that had a comparable amount of biological material poured into their airways but without the Bordetella bacteria or with a different bacterial species. They also performed a similar experiment with baby baboons and this time claimed 100% success in provoking bouts of coughing. But once again, not a control group in sight, so another relegation to the archives of pseudoscience. It's amazing how many times we go over these types of nonsensical methodologies and have to keep pointing out that introducing biological material in this fashion is not evidence of germs attacking the recipient. Just about any fluid injected into the lungs can cause a pneumonitis or inflammatory reaction. That is why anaesthetists are so careful to prevent anything going into the lungs when they have a patient under general anaesthetic. So as it stands, there are no human or animal experiments showing that Bordetella bacteria have the capacity to attack us and cause whooping cough. And there is no evidence that sick people can pass it on to the healthy. The opening sentence of the paper we have just gone over states, pertussis is a highly contagious acute respiratory illness caused by the bacterial pathogen Bordetella pertussis. In that case, why didn't they just expose human or animal primates through natural routes and watch it spread? As we can see, that doesn't happen. Due to the lack of experimental evidence that demonstrates pertussis is a contagious disease, the medico-pharmaceutical establishment have attempted to use epidemiological data to support the claim. But the data does not support the model, and as we wrote in the final pandemic, in 2020, a pertussis systematic review paper found that many, quote, cases had minimal or no symptoms and concluded that the studies included in this review report a high incidence of asymptomatic and mild atypical infection among household contacts of pertussis cases. Asymptomatic cases, an instant violation of Koch's first postulate being the microorganism must be found in abundance in all organisms suffering from the disease, but should not be found in healthy organisms. This is where the nonsense of germ theory is on full display. We have a claimed pathogen in the form of the bacterium Bordetella pertussis, so that if the bacterium is found in a sick person, then this confirms the hypothesis. However, if the bacterium is found in a well person, then they use the asymptomatic infection clause. It is obviously an unfalsifiable hypothesis and therefore cannot be tested through the scientific method. In fact, the wider concept of immunity to microbes also falls into the same category. Please watch my video, Is Immunity Real?, to learn about this. This also relates to last week's video, The Truth About Contagion, where I talked about how the definitions of words such as infection have been changed in order to patch up the broken germ theory model. Germ theory was never a thing from the very beginning, and even Koch himself couldn't fulfill the postulates. I won't get into the laboratory diagnostics of whooping cough because it essentially revolves around the detection of Bordetella pertussis. In the final pandemic, we cover the PCR in some detail to show how cases are created for non-existent pandemics, including the 2006 incident that took place at the Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Centre in New Hampshire. The cause of the clinical picture of whooping cough is likely to be multifactorial, but clearly Bordetella pertussis can only be said to be a bystander that reacts to the underlying terrain. The war against this microbe, like all others, is a concocted narrative embraced by the pharmaceutical industry in order to create a market for their vaccines. As much as parents do not want to hear it, they need to deeply reflect on what they are doing in the case of illnesses, such as whooping cough. We have seen that the disease burden fell away last century in the First World, and these days it is mostly a problem in destitute communities. This is not a simple wealth issue though, and all children need to be adequately looked after, including through organic diets, pure water sources, and healthy environments. If a child, or anyone for that matter, does become acutely ill, then it should be taken as a warning sign that the underlying conditions need to be addressed. As a mother, I personally learnt these lessons, and with experience having more children, they subsequently had far less bouts of acute illness, up to the point where they are almost always well. As well as massive changes to our family diet, we also pulled our children out of school and any, quote, childcare facilities. Additionally, one of the most important paradigm shifts to make is keeping distance from the allopathic medical system. This means avoiding all of the pointless and toxic childhood vaccines, as well as almost all other pharmaceutical products. I'll confess that once upon a time, I used to think that giving my children paracetamol or acetaminophen was a kind and soothing thing to do. These days, I would view such an intervention as a huge folly. Protecting children from the allopathic model also means avoiding routine visits, which can lead to a cascade of unnecessary investigations and interventions. But perhaps worst of all during such interactions is that parents are guilt-tripped with fear-based narratives and pressured into accepting vaccines under the completely fraudulent notion that the products could improve their family's health. Please check out all the free resources at drsambailey.com to learn about all the natural ways to achieve optimal health. There is also the option of joining Dr. Sam's community, where you can get access to regular Q&A sessions with my husband Mark and I. We have addressed hundreds of topics surrounding health, liberty and well-being, and the list continues to grow all the time. If you enjoyed this video, please visit supportdrsam.com